This is Joe Krein from Elvis2001.net, and we're on Elvis Express Radio. We got Dick Grob. Dick, can you tell me a little about yourself, where you grew up, and
Well, Joe, I grew up basically all around the world. My father was in the service. I was born in Ohio and traveled down to Georgia when he was transferred down there, and went to Europe. I was in Germany when I was probably 7 years old, and went to military school there, and one of the dependent schools, and then we were out on the West Coast before he went to Korea, where he was killed. And, my mother and I moved back to Ohio. So that's kind of where I went around. I was in Ohio for a while, and then I moved to California, and was a member of the Palm Springs Police Department there, and then from there I met Elvis, and finally Elvis made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and I moved back to Memphis, stayed there till Elvis passed away, and stayed on for a couple of years working for Vernon, and then moved back to California again, and now I'm up in Las Vegas, Nevada, Lost Wages.
Do you think maybe that's why Elvis and you got along so well? Because we all know Elvis liked, police and badges and stuff like that. You think?
Yeah, I think that's so. I think that's part of it. Elvis, like you said, always liked policemen, and I think had he not been a singer or a musician, that he might have turned to law enforcement. And I think one of the reasons is that law enforcement has a comradeship. It doesn't matter whether you're a policeman from New York, Chicago, Tokyo, London. You're all part of the same brotherhood, and one policeman can go to another policeman in a different city, identify himself, and you're kind of one of that same brotherhood. There's a comradeship that exists in that field, and I think that's one of the things that Elvis really admired about policemen was that comradeship, because it doesn't matter. You face the same trials and tribulations no matter what city you're in.
Well, I think you kind of had that kind of comradeship amongst what people call the Memphis Mafia and people who were inside the camp of Elvis Presley's. Don't you think? I mean, you're very right there, Joe. That comradeship, that loyalty, that getting along together, working together, was a very exclusive team. I mean, if you were a part of it, you were in, and everybody performed to get the job done. Things that were done back in Elvis's day are still being done today from the way things were set up. I mean, it's kind of like all the guys sat down and wrote the manual that's still being followed today on how to do concerts and perform security for the stars and protect him from the fans, not so much because the fans desired to hurt the star, but the accidental hurt. Do you remember any? Was there one show that Elvis did that sticks in your mind? That you must have seen so many, Dick. I mean, I can't imagine how many concerts that you saw. I mean, hundreds.
Yeah, I saw a lot of concerts and everything, and I think one of the best ones that I remember, and there are several, but I think one of the most outstanding ones was the Aloha from Hawaii. I think if I were to rank them all, that would be one of at the very top. I wouldn't want to say that was the very best, but in my opinion, just because of the way it was put together, the fun that Elvis had doing that show and getting ready for it and stuff like that. And he was dynamic in that show. His voice was just
truly, I mean, it was going out to space, and I think Elvis let it go beyond that satellite that was beaming it back to Earth. I think it's still floating around the universe out there.
And he looked great, absolutely incredible.
Oh, it's one of the best. You know, he really wanted to look his best for that show. He wanted to work hard and have the show be just right. And to me, it was. You know, but still, like everything else, he had fun doing it. We all had fun doing it. We all enjoyed it. You know?
Was Elvis a perfectionist?
Was Elvis a perfectionist? I think that would be an understatement.
Really?
Well, yeah, you know, the thing was, you know, I mean, Elvis could go into a concert hall and step out on stage, and, you know, Elvis could have gone out there, stood there and burped, and people would have applauded and cheered him.
Yeah.
But he was up there, and he wanted to give the best show that he could give. And, you know, one of the guys might hit a bad note. You know, maybe James Burton hit the wrong string or something, or Glenn D. Harden hit the wrong key, whatever. You know,
which happens.
Elvis heard that and knew that. The fans didn't know it. They didn't recognize it. But Elvis would stop the show and say, "Hey guys, you know, let's get it right." You know, he was never upset with it. You know, he was just he wanted the very best to go out. You know, I can remember one show we were on tour, and he had told Joe Esposito that the Joe Gershio Orchestra behind, you know, the TCB band was kind of slacking off. It was like they weren't really into the show, you know, and he wanted them to do it right. And Esposito turned around and passed it on to Joe Gershio, and Joe Gershio passed it on, but Elvis didn't see the improvement that he wanted. So after a couple of more shows, Elvis started pulling songs out from the bottom of the sack, you might say. And all these guys, you could see the band, it looked like a snowstorm in there with sheet music floating all over because as these guys tried to find the right sheet music. That was the end of their slacking off.
Yeah.
They paid attention after that, you know.
Yeah. A lot of fans seem to come down on Colonel Parker. Don't you think that maybe he's gotten I myself don't believe in what people, you know, say about Colonel Parker. I think he was a brilliant man, and he was the man who, you know, came up with, let's put Elvis around the world, Aloha from Hawaii. Don't you think he's kind of got, you know, people saying Elvis is like a god and he was the devil kind of thing?
Well, I kind of agree with you. I think the Colonel has, over the years, gotten a bad rap, and a lot of it is because people don't know the inside story. The Colonel was not a person to talk about things. The Colonel never wrote a book. He had no intentions of writing a book about Elvis, you know. So I think the Colonel really got blamed for a lot of things that people only know part of the story to, you know. The Colonel was a brilliant man, and the Colonel was a manager for many stars, several stars before Elvis came along. When Elvis came along, the Colonel stopped working with anybody else and only worked with Elvis. That was the only person he took care of. And the Colonel took care of him, you know, from the management standpoint, 24 hours a day, you know, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So, you know, the agreement that existed between the Colonel and Elvis apparently was, you know, satisfactory to Elvis, and it was satisfactory to the Colonel. So what other people say, you know, they don't know that interior relationship that existed between the two of them. So that's, you know, that's a thing I think people try to blame the Colonel for things. You know, I've heard stories that, well, the Colonel worked Elvis to death. Well, let me tell you something. The Colonel was right there for every show that and on the tours for every city that Elvis played in. And Elvis is the one that went to the Colonel and said, "You book me more often, get me more tours.
Really?
I want to work more, or, I'll get a new manager." Well, the Colonel booked him more tours. So it wasn't the Colonel that was booking, people say that, the Colonel worked Elvis to death, and that's what caused his heart attack and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's not so. Elvis wanted to work. He enjoyed the live audiences. He enjoyed being able to connect with people.
Mm-hmm. Could you see toward the end that he wasn't looking well or feeling well, or?
No, I didn't see it. I don't think anybody saw it. We knew Elvis was overweight, but then he had that problem. He blossomed, expand a little bit, and then it would go away, and then it'd come back. But I think one of the things is when you're close to somebody every day, you don't see these changes because they appear more gradual. If you hadn't seen Elvis for 6 months or a year, and then you saw him, you might say, "Geez, he's put on a whole lot of weight, and he looks terrible." But when you're right there, you don't see it, and when you're starting to look at Elvis's lifestyle, it shouldn't be surprising to anybody that he had a heart attack and died.
Mm-hmm. And even not looking well, it never mattered to the fans, though.
Well, Elvis was Elvis. Elvis had a mystique that has yet to be defined and identified by anybody. And he walked out on stage. He gave 110% all the time. His voice was so wonderful and so glorious that you couldn't help but relate to him. When he sang gospel songs, it shouldn't be any doubt in anybody's mind that he wasn't talking directly to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he sang gospel, he lit up.
Well, the whole audience did because it was magnificent.
Mm-hmm. Dick, do you mind talking about the night of August 15th, the last time that you saw Elvis? Do you mind talking about it, or?
No, I saw Elvis, and I spent quite a bit of time upstairs talking to him about the new tour that was coming up. He had some concerns, obviously, and there was some concerns about a number of things, and we spent a long time talking about that. As usual, before the concert tour, Elvis was given a briefing of what cities and what to expect in the cities, kind of a long-range thing, either by myself or Joe Esposito, or we'd talk about it, what the plans were for the next day, what time we won't plan to leave, and so forth, just to kind of brief him on what was going on. And I guess it was about early in the morning. It was about 5:30 and or so, and he was going to go play racquetball with Billy and Joe Smith and Ginger Alden, and I told him, I said, you want me to play? I said, I got my stuff in the car. And he said, no. He said, go on home. He said, I'm just going to play a little bit, and I'll see you when we leave. So I left and went home and went to bed. And that was the last time I saw him alive.
Mm-hmm. So you got a phone call from like Joe or somebody, or?
Well, I had just gotten up, and I got a phone call from Tommy Henley, who was one of the people that worked on the grounds there, and Tommy just told me to get down to the hospital quick. And I asked Tommy, I said, is it bad? And he said, it looks bad. And that was the total conversation. I raced down to the hospital and got there, and he was in the emergency room, and Joe was there, Marion Cock was there, if I remember correctly. I think Charlie was there. And I got in there just shortly after I got there. The doctors finally gave up working on him and pronounced him dead.
Yeah. Now, you even protected him after he was gone.
Well, yeah, we took him up to the morgue, and by then, there had been a lot of news releases about it, and there were several photographers around, news people were around the hospital, because it obviously was earth-shattering news if it was true, and unfortunately it was true, but we took him up to the morgue, and by then I got Al Strada had come down there and to secure the body in the morgue, because the hospital didn't have enough security staff, and we found a couple of paparazzi stashed hidden in the morgue, or the place that they store the bodies, and so we politely helped them out. Unfortunately, they had slippery fingers and dropped their cameras, which happened to break open, so any film that they had they lost. I feel real sorry for them about that. But then Al Strada stayed on the door of the morgue until I could contact Memphis PD and get some officers down there to augment hospital security staff.
Well, hey, Dick, what are you doing now?
Well, I'm kind of semi-retired now, Joe. I still do security work for high-profile people, entertainers that come into town that need security or want security for various reasons. If I feel like doing it, I still get calls from people, and I work some other special projects that kind of keep me busy. If go out and play golf with Sam Thompson or some of the other people around here.
Now, you're going to be going down for the 30th anniversary, aren't you?
Yes, being Memphis there for a couple of days. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the whole week as I've done in the past, but I will be there. Graceland has asked me to come in and be part of their insiders thing. And in fact, this is the first year that they're doing some talking about Colonel Parker and myself and Luann Parker, his wife, will be there, along with Charlie Stone, who worked for Jerry Weintraub, but was assigned to the Colonel's staff.
And a friend of mine.
Yeah, was along with the Colonel on every tour. So the three of us will be there trying to, tell some people about the Colonel, and hopefully we can change some of the opinions that some people have. Some will never change, but all we can do is tell what we know.
Well, Dick, thank you very much for doing this for me, for Elvis Express Radio.
Well, Elvis Express has been a friend of mine for some time, and occasionally I get a chance to email with the people back and forth, and I'm happy to do it.
Okay, you take care, Dick.
You too, Joe. Thanks for talking to you.